And here we are. Happy New Year 2026. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
amazing.
You know what really
Good to see you
shocked
again
me
after a long
was,
hiatus.
yeah, no kidding. What also shocked me is they're starting to celebrate or the whatever they call it, basically the 250th anniversary of
Yep.
America. I remember the
Yeah.
bicentennial. That's how old I am. It's like,
Yeah.
holy crap, that was 50 years ago. So,
Yep. I remember it too. I was 4, and I was really excited about the bicentennial quarters because I thought they were so neat because they were
right,
different.
right,
And as
right,
a little kid,
exactly. So,
anytime I could get my hands on one of those, like I held on to it. I still have a huge box of them.
yeah, yeah. No, no, it was really cool. Anyways, well, fortunately, we've been off the air for a little while, but nothing's really gone on in the last few
Yeah.
weeks.
Nothing
So
left to say.
we can just kind of pick up where we left off. Man, I tell you, speaking of the bicentennial, yeah, I mean, I guess it was probably almost that long ago where I felt like there was that much chaos in the air. Because even back then, there was, we were still kind of coming out of the Vietnam stuff and things like that.
Yep.
It's like, I mean, right now it's just so chaotic. And not that I want to dwell on that. We want to hopefully talk about more positive things or issues or whatever, but it is just kind of a very weird time.
Yeah. Well, I can hardly remember so many things going on of such import all at the same time. I almost feel like you just sort of need to start going down the list. So, obviously, there's what went on in Venezuela. There's what's
Yep.
going on in Minnesota right now.
Yep.
What else? What else can you add to that list? Those
Just
are the two.
just kind of the ongoing tariff stuff and immigration, and like the Minnesota stuff, just all the immigration stuff going on. And
Yeah.
then I think actually more to what we tend to talk about is even locally here, just the amazing talks that are going on, like in San Diego and the state as a whole, just about the big, deep deficit hole that everybody is in. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of knock on wood, a lot of the North County cities around here are doing okay, but like San
Mhm.
Diego or LA, San Francisco, I mean,
Yeah. It's
they are
bad.
just like hemorrhaging. And I don't, well, in fact, I figured that might be one of the topics you were going to bring up because they're talking about new taxes coming up in November, a half-cent sales tax increase,
Mhm.
and then the other one, more probably pertaining to you, is I don't know if you've heard about the document transfer tax stuff they're talking about, but
Yeah.
in the county, they're going from like whatever it is, it's like $1.10 per thousand right now when you sell a house to $30
Yeah.
per thousand. I mean, that's going from like, it's $1 million home. That's going from like, $1,000 to $60,000 or something. It's like crazy. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
As
I
they
think
say,
it's, yeah, $60 per thousand.
yeah. No, it's crazy, and it always comes down to the same thing with the irresponsible governance, and I actually think that sort of what's going on in Minnesota with all the fraud is an important thing to sort of look at when you want to sort of generalize the idea about how a government should work, because again, California's got a huge deficit, and they're a big part of the reason they have a huge deficit is because there's a ton of fraud in California, and apparently the fraud investigations are federally are going to be coming to California soon. But when you have something like that, and you have all this waste and misuse of funds, the idea that you're just going to keep taxing everybody to try and pay off all your debts and then throw all the money away to fraud, it's just insane. At some point, you just have to say, look, we just can't keep doing this anymore, because you can tax everybody into oblivion, but then if you're not responsible with the money, it just doesn't matter because it's just gone out the door, lost to fraud. And I think one of the other things that's been going on that I think is huge is the flight of some really big businesses out of California. In and Out left, Chevron left.
Yeah.
um I can't remember what the name of the company is, but the company that makes all the pizza crusts for like all the fast food pizzas left. So apparently we're going to have a
Oh,
pizza crisis in California soon. So,
uh,
oh, and I think what Oracle packed up and left. There's just this huge
yeah,
laundry list, and then of course they're closing the refineries, which is going to be a disaster for things like food prices. But anyway, as I say, California just keeps putting more and more taxes on people, but all the revenue is leaving the state. And as I say, if you don't even know what happened to the $24 billion for the homeless fund is missing, the billions of dollars they spent on the stupid train is missing,
right.
and so it's like, when are we going to stop just voting for people to put taxes on that they just throw down the toilet?
Well, that's always been the quandary for me. I never really saw the deficit part should ever be a partisan issue. I mean, it seems like everybody should be worried about that. I don't care what side of the fence you're on. And,
Yeah,
I think all of us have been in that situation where, hey, money's tight or whatever. And so we don't have the luxury, most of us anyways, don't have the luxury of saying, well, money's all tight, so I'm going to go figure out how I'm going to get myself a raise or I'm going to generate a
yeah,
whole lot more money just out of the blue. Um, and so why there isn't any incentive for both sides to truly come together, because it has to be, there may be some needs to raise some money for some reason, but odds
hmm
are there's probably as much, if not more, reason to try and cut a few things too. And that's kind of
yeah,
where we're at, particularly in California. And what's going to be interesting to hear when as the election gets near, because of affordability is becoming the new watchword, right? For everybody,
yeah,
particularly here in California. It's like, well, if you're truly behind that, which I can't imagine anybody arguing against, we need to improve affordability and lower the cost of living. Um, at the same time, you're going to raise taxes. How does that make sense? It doesn't square.
yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I was thinking about very specifically too is, so I think California is sort of reaching like a critical point,
Yeah,
because you're taxing and regulating, and you're putting special assessments on different industries and groups, trying to get extra money out of them. And as I say, now they're starting to leave. So let's just look at the refineries. Some people are suggesting that gasoline in California is going to go up to $8 a gallon. I mean, I don't know if that's actually true, but I think it will go up with the loss of the refinery.
it's already
And
pretty
then
high.
what gets me is that, yeah, every grocery store delivery that's stocked with food is delivered by trucks. You can't fly a plane to a grocery store to stock it with food. You can't load it on a train to get it to the grocery store. It all has to get loaded onto a truck, which is filled up with gasoline and then drives to the supermarket. So when we tax the refiners out of existence in California and force those industries out, what we're really doing is we're going to increase the cost of eggs. And I know that that's the
Right.
universal marker for, the
Right.
cost of things. The cost of
Yeah.
eggs is going to go up, or we're not going to have eggs because the people who deliver eggs are just going to say, I can't afford to operate my truck in California anymore because it's too expensive. And so it's like, you think that you're making revenue because you're putting a bunch of fees on the refiners, but then you lose that revenue because the refiners leave. And then cost of living goes up even more greatly for everybody in general, because the cost of groceries and the cost of fuel goes up. And now what you've done is you've lost revenue to the state, and you've increased everyone's cost of living. It's doubly bad. And that's what we're doing in California right now, and it's just horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, well, that's why I was holding some hope that because the affordability message really seems to be taking hold, that would motivate people to really think about, okay, what is causing that beyond, you know, all the things we typically talk about. So, well, housing's expensive and all that. Yeah, housing is
Yeah,
expensive, but there is a reason that's causing that too. And
right. And that's
and we're not really starting to have those discussions yet. Everybody's saying we're going to lower the cost of living? It's like, okay, how? When at the
yeah,
same time you're also saying you're going to literally whatever, I don't know what, I'm terrible with math, whatever going from $1 to $60 per thousand is to transfer your house when you sell it. It's like, That's a big percentage. It's what, 600%? I guess. I don't know. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so anyways, it just does, it doesn't jive. I don't see how you
Yeah.
do both.
Well, I think that's sort of the universal problem that we've had with our governance and for many years. And I think we've sort of mentioned this on the show and in times
Yeah.
past. But it's the idea that you're sort of glossing over the root cause of things and putting a band-aid on it. I've always sort of felt this way about affirmative action. Yeah, you have like horrible schools, right? That are not teaching anybody anything. Graduation rates are awful, especially California, Los Angeles Unified School District is awful. And so you look at the test scores from people coming from those schools and they're really bad. And so you want to help them out. So what you do is you say, okay, well, we're going to take 3 people out of this school district and we're going to stick them in Harvard. And everyone's like, yay, look, 3 of our students went to Harvard. And they say, look, see how much we're helping you? We're sending some of your kids to Harvard. But it never actually addresses the problem that people are not getting an education.
Right.
And when they don't get an education, they're not employable, they don't know how to do anything. You can't even like manage a checkbook. So it's ridiculous. And we've papered in California especially. They just paper over things and paper over things and paper over things. With some kind of like free giveaway or some kind of subsidy. I mean, it's like the Obamacare subsidies that expired. Everyone was talking about how, with the expiration of the subsidies, people were saying, well, premium prices are going to go up. But that's not right. Premium prices didn't go up. Your out-of-pocket expenses did because you lost your subsidies, but the premiums stayed where they were. And that's such an important distinction. And when you just gloss over it and say, oh, well, premiums went up, then you can't even begin to solve or address the problem because you're not even looking at the problem. You're just talking about subsidies when you should be looking at cost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not only cost, but the outcomes of what people are paying for anyways. I mean, if you really want to get to it, that is the true measure. It's like, are you actually providing the health care at a reasonable cost? And no.
Yeah.
We're getting less than adequate health care for more money than we really should be spending. So, I know. I don't know. Now, that's where I'm just curious, maybe where hopefully the independents or at least more reasonable-minded people, regardless, even, I'm sure there's some in the Democrat side and some in the Republican side, reasonable-minded people can't start forcing that issue now, to start thinking, hey, we need to clean the slate at this point, in terms of looking at each of these topics one by one and figure out, we don't even really have to care about how we got here. It doesn't even matter. It's like, how do we just start all over? Whatever the topic is, right? Cost of living, whatever.
Yeah.
And figure out what is the most rational approach. But things are so jumbled up and so complex, purposely so, in many cases. I mean, it's like the tax code. It's like the tax code continues to get more and more complicated. I was just talking to my wife about that, about all the new stuff that's coming out and all the different deductions that are going to be coming out, and they're not going to be taxing on tips or overtime and all. It's like, okay, well, where's all the money coming from then? I mean, and I know there's that big group of people who are high earning W-2 people who ultimately pay the biggest chunk. I mean, the ultra rich don't pay because they don't really take salaries. They just live, in a whole different realm. They don't really need to live on a salary. So they're not taxed those standard rates. And then the people that are lower income, they're starting to fall off the map in terms of even, having very minimal taxes. And so it's that sweet spot of people that are making a decent salary that it's getting piled on all the time. And so I understand why people complain, particularly those people complain about the tax rates. I don't think the billionaires complain too much because they're not paying that much anyways, dollar for dollar. Because it's really interesting. I've read so many things recently about how that all, I've never really studied it that closely, about how billionaires in particular, so many of them, if you look at Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and all these guys, they take like almost no salary, because what they do is it's all in stock, right? And so they borrow against their stock or whatever they own, their houses they own, and they just loan themselves money at 6%. That's cheaper than,
Taxes.
50% tax rate. So
Yeah.
it's like, that's why they don't take any salary. Makes perfect sense to me, and totally legal. It's the way it's set
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and there's the separate rates for things like capital gains. So, like if you're selling stock and you're making your money off stock, then that's a different rate than it is,
That's why they don't sell anything.
Right. But
That's
the thing
so
is, what we should be. I was going to say, well, we need to change the tax code. And I've said this for years and years and years. It's not so much that we need to tinker with the rates. Everybody tinkers with the rates. Oh, this person's going to raise it by 1%, and that person's going to lower it. What we need is tax simplification. Pay 10%, and that's it. Flat tax.
Yeah.
Very easy. Everyone can understand it. And you have to have enforcement in place so that people who are making capital gains or gains in other respects, are also paying their taxes. And that way, the idea that you can just sort of like avoid the 50% tax rate to pay 6%. Right. It doesn't make any sense if it's a flat tax, because the flat tax would be relatively low, across the board anyway. And then you have to, couple that with actually getting spending down and, figuring out, how to get rid of some of this fraud and abuse so that you can save the programs that you want to save and run things in a more efficient manner. But right now, the tax code is just completely ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to figure out what the good message is for particularly independents out there right now, because it is this kind of conundrum of trying to lower, I don't think anybody disagrees that affordability is an issue. It's like, generally speaking, but at the same time, how do you focus on that in a equitable way across the board? Because if all you're going to do is continue down this road of, okay, people that are kind of hurting, we're going to supply subsidies for or whatever, it doesn't ultimately solve the problem. It just makes it worse. And so it's almost like whatever the candidates, the leaders come out with talking about affordability, they have to couple it with, how do you do that in an equitable way that everybody shares the burden or shares the pain? And they're not doing that.
I don't think you need to worry about that. I think if you universally get regulations and taxes and things down, that will slow the rise of cost in pretty much everything.
Right.
And I think there's sometimes people struggle with the idea that, somebody's getting more of a benefit than somebody else. Well, that's life. Life isn't fair. You want to have good governance. Yeah. So the push should be smaller government, less regulation, less taxation. And, if you do that, some people will make a killing. But in the long run, many more people on the lower rung will see an improvement in the quality of their life. It's sort of like people talk about poverty numbers and, the number of people that are starving and things like that. It's true that, America makes a lot of people ultra rich, but it's also done a pretty good job of lifting a lot of people up out of poverty. It used to be that the majority of the world was living in poverty, and now in developed states and Western states,
percentage.
It's not the case anymore. And the idea that you're ever going to achieve some kind of equity, it's impossible. It's not even, I don't even worry about it.
Well, yeah, and when I say equity, it'll never be perfect, no question about it. But it's just trying to figure out how to make it a little closer to fair, particularly when as I started studying the whole billionaire thing, it's like, how do you get it to the point? Because when it comes to assets, they don't sell assets for the most part because of the capital gains, because that's ordinary income, right? And that's why they do the loan thing, and so it's like, how do you address that? So that's the one place where I think it is kind of a tricky thing to figure that piece of it out. So they do
let me
pay a little bit more into it.
Let me. I have a little bit of experience, not rich enough to have a lot of experience, but a little. So basically, when you set up a corporation and the corporations own the business, then all the money that the business earns is taxed at the corporate rate, unless you disgorge all the earnings of the corporation to yourself or somebody else, or have massively high costs of doing business and you can claim that you're not profitable at all. So you're either paying corporate tax rates or you're paying personal rates, because either the money's coming to you and other people or it's being taxed at the corporate level. Because if you leave money back in the corporation, then the corporation has to pay taxes. But here's where the rubber hits the road. It's stock fund, hedge fund managers and people like that. They don't make anything. They don't produce anything. Right. They don't necessarily even need to employ anybody. So they've got all this funny money. And so they can just sort of move it around and do whatever they want with it. And so taxing that is very, very difficult.
Yep.
What you have to be very careful of is like Elon Musk versus George Soros. George Soros is probably not going to pay any taxes, but I would bet money that Elon Musk is paying ginormous amounts of taxes because he has massive amounts of employees that he has to pay. That's taxed. He has a corporation. If the corporation makes money, then it pays corporate taxes. If he takes money out of the corporation to pay himself, then he's made an income and he pays taxes. So when you have an actual business that's actually doing things and employing people, you pay taxes. It's the financial gurus that sit on high and can just manipulate money. And they're very, very difficult to tax. And I would say you would probably have to have a special assessment on, like moving money. You'd have to have some kind of tax to do that. But taxing that, I admit, is very difficult. But if you're trying to create some sort of equity between business owners and employees and people that are quote unquote rich versus people that are quote unquote poor, you have to be extremely specific about what you're saying, because as soon as you just engulf all corporations as quote unquote rich, well, they're all going to go bankrupt or all they're going to leave because they have massive expenses. Because the people who work in the financial industry, like a George Soros, well, I mean, what kind of expenses does he have? He has an office somewhere. He might get charged for trading things back and forth a little bit, but he doesn't have to buy like massive amounts of equipment. Like, think about a construction company. Construction companies are often leveraged to the hilt because, they have to have bulldozers and tractors and employees, and they have to constantly buy building materials, which are constantly getting more expensive. So there's all this stuff going on, that involves running a company like that. And you say, okay, well, we're increasing your tax rate. And now the person has to say, well, I can't hire any new employees now, or I can't buy new equipment, or, I can't take on this bigger job because I can't afford the initial investment to get the materials. And so it becomes very complicated, and the tax code is very complicated, which is why I'm all for, getting it down.
Yeah.
But, the corporate hedge funds managers, when you're just doing nothing but financial stuff and sitting in your ivory tower, that is a very different world than trying to run an actual brick and mortar business.
Oh yeah, no question. I think where the big question mark, at least for me, comes is with the Elon Musk of the world. If his personal wealth continues to grow at, 20 times, 50 times the average person, percentage wise, that there's a reason for that. One is definitely the businesses maybe are doing better, maybe not. I mean, you could argue Tesla is not doing better, but he's still getting amazing amounts of money. But he's got other things besides Tesla, obviously. But I mean, he's worth now $700 billion, I think. And so I think that's where the disparity is. It's like, okay, well, somewhere, somehow, and I'm not saying all 700 would be taxable or whatever, but that didn't just kind of come out of it's sort of the funny money thing too, right? Because even though he's worth $700 billion, it's not like he's going to do anything with that, right? I mean, he basically turns around and reinvests it in something else, right? And that's where the whole asset things come. So then it comes back down to it. He still has to pay for stuff. And I think we've talked about this before, where some combination of flat tax possibly, along with some consumption tax, because at the end of the day, Elon Musk is probably spending a crap load of money, right?
Yeah.
Personally,
Yeah.
not business wise, just personally.
Yeah, I have always thought actually that consumption taxes are the way to go. I don't think income tax. I've never thought that income tax makes a particularly great amount of sense. I especially don't think a graduated income tax makes a lot of sense. So I think that
there's just too many ways you can. There's just too many ways you can manipulate it and play around with it and all that. That's the beauty of a consumption tax of some form. But again, there's no perfect model in any of this stuff. The only downside that I ever saw with consumption taxes is if you are somebody like a small business that does drive around a lot and, has to spend thousands and thousands of dollars every month on gas, as an example, or utilities or whatever the consumption of the good or service is, they could actually end up being hurt. But if there wasn't the graduated income tax, if that wasn't there anymore and it was just a flat tax, and you could depend, okay, whatever it is, I got to pay in 5%, 10%, whatever it is, plus whatever I spend for gas and all these other consumption things, it probably would be a wash for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, as I say, I also think that the nice thing about the consumption tax is you could exempt certain things. Like I would say that food would be something that maybe you would exempt or have a very low consumption tax rate on, and fuel I think would be another thing that you could have a very low rate on. And then you'd pump up the rate on like luxury items. If you want to buy a $100,000 car, well, you're going to get hit with a big consumption tax. If you can afford the $100,000 car, you can afford the big consumption tax on it. And so you can adjust the consumption like that, and I think that helps. And also, one of the things is if the flat tax is still in existence, like let's say you have a flat tax and a consumption tax, since you can deduct expenses from your business, that helps you pay for things like fuel and necessities.
Yeah.
And then you're still contributing, through the flat tax. So I like consumption taxes. That would be what I would prefer. I know that. I mean, the idea that we're going to get rid of the income tax. I mean, as I say, as much as I like the idea of that, and I think it'd be better to have the consumption tax, I don't think it's going to happen. But the tax code that we have now just wastes too much money. It's too expensive and too inefficient, and there's too many loopholes built into it, and it's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, just the bureaucracy alone would go down to almost zero if you did more focus on a consumption tax, just because of all the craziness. It was so funny because we were talking to our lawyer on trust stuff the other day, and because we had to update our trust. And I just asked him, well, what about our car? Do I need to, I forget now, because it's been several years since we updated. Do we need to put that and specifically put that under there, under the name of the trust? And he said, well, is your car worth more than $250,000?
No.
No, he said, don't worry about it. He says that's the only time it makes, and unless you've got some, amazing Maserati or something, or classic car that's worth $1 million, it's like, no, it's just another personal item. So I learned that.
Well, the other part of I was going to say the other part that always gets me with the taxes is that the most hated and feared organization within the government is always the IRS. Everyone always says the IRS.
Yep.
And the ability to essentially tax things out of existence is very powerful. And so one of the things that one of the reasons I would like to see the IRS go is because recently people have begun to use the IRS as a political cudgel. The party in power can sick the IRS on its political opponents. Well, that's really bad. But if we didn't have an IRS because we had a flat tax, then you wouldn't have this political weapon you could wield against other people.
Yep.
So,
no, exactly.
And it's funny. It's one of the reasons that religious organizations are exempt from income taxes, because think it was Henry VIII and his ilk, and that whole war between the Protestants and the Catholics. Whichever ruler came into power
Right.
immediately attempted to tax the other religion out of existence. Because if you can just arbitrarily raise taxes on things and just say, you owe me this huge tax for this, well, then the organization is just annihilated instantly. So it's like, I've always hated the IRS because I feel like it's not an ethical organization. It's used too much to wield too much power. So in addition to the fact that the tax code is garbage, it'd be good to get rid of the IRS because you'd get rid of that political weapon that people use against each other.
Yeah, which would be good for everybody. Yeah, again, that's always been an interesting one for me too. It's like I don't see where some of this should even be as partisan as it's become. It's like there's nothing really good about the way we're motivating that particular department to collect taxes. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's bad.
It's really bad.
It's just bad all the way around.
Yeah. And like you said, it really goes however the winds are blowing at the time, right? So it's like, it just makes no sense. Yeah. Well, we better leave it there. Good catching up. Yep. And
very good.
Hopefully things.
It's been a long time.
And hopefully things calm down next week. I'm sure everything will be smoothing out for the next couple of days.
Venezuela will be running like a well-oiled machine by next week.
Yeah. Exactly.
No more.
Yeah. That's what we're planning our next vacation there. So I hope so.
Yeah, because now that it's all sorted out, it should be great.
All right. Talk at you later.
Yep. Talk to you then. Bye.